After a full year and a half of zero new Marvel Cinematic Universe content since Spider-Man Far From Home came out July 2019, we've finally gotten the return of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the beginning of the fourth phase with WandaVision, or more specifically the first 2 episodes of the first season. The first 2 episodes of the show are significantly more divisive than I thought it would be. After I watched the first 2 episodes, which I really enjoyed, I found it to be very intriguing, very intense at certain moments, and I definitely understand what they're going for. I really like the concept. I basically like everything about the show, but it seems like there are a lot of people who don't agree with me. After I watch certain shows, and this happens a lot, I tend to go to the subreddits, which I went to the subreddit for Marvel Studios where they talk about WandaVision, and it seemed to be 100% positive. Everybody liked it, but then I went to IMDb and it was a little bit more divisive. When I went to there for the first time, I had a 9 out of 10 rating, which is a very good rating for a TV show. But then I checked back a couple hours later, and it fell down to an 8, and now it's at 7.8 out of 10, which is not what it deserves. A 7.9 out of 10 is basically an average TV show. It's where a TV show ends up, an average TV show ends up after a couple seasons. Like the CW shows that I talk about on this channel, they end up around there. 7.8 is actually the high end of those TV shows, and WandaVision is, I think, in my opinion, a much higher level of quality and deserves a much higher rating based off the first 2 episodes, but also based off of what I think or where I think is going. So I'm going to give a short review of what I thought about the first 2 episodes, and then I'm going to talk about the whole review bombing situation that this show has gotten on IMDb, why so many people gave it a 1 out of 10 rating on the show and rated the entire show a 1 out of 10 or even a 10 out of 10 based off just the first 2 episodes, and how unfortunate I think that is. So let's start with my review for the first 2 episodes, which I really liked and really enjoyed. I love the idea of the show, the whole concept that each episode is parodying a different era of sitcom, starting with the 1950s and 60s, eras of sitcom that I've never seen before. I've never seen any of the shows, and I never would, but we're going to get closer and closer to the eras that I have seen, a little bit of the 90s, more so the 2000s, maybe the 2010s if they're going for that, but I heard that they're parodying the whole mockumentary style, The Office, Modern Family, and Parks and Rec, which is something that I am really looking forward to, because those are all shows that I've seen and I love, so I am looking forward to them parodying that. But even the eras of sitcom that I haven't seen, like the 1950s and 60s, it was still really enjoyable. It was a really fun 2 episodes with that parody. Yes, it's not the most revolutionary form of comedy. It's actually the oldest form of comedy that we've ever seen on television. But that's what they're going for. That's what they're trying to emulate. And I really did like that in these 2 episodes. And I think they did it very well. Honestly, it was pretty funny. Both of the actors, Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bettany, pulled it off perfectly. I haven't seen the shows again, but I just feel like they've gotten the mannerisms of people from the 1950s and 60s sitcoms down. The whole drunk vision thing, that was hilarious. There are a lot of very fun moments that they wouldn't have been able to do otherwise in a more modern form of comedy, so I did really like that. That being said, the comedy was definitely not my favorite part of the show, because there are a lot of much better things, like the commercials in between, all those hints and Easter eggs to Wanda's past, the hints that Wanda is the one that's doing all this, she's the one that's created this reality, the whole stop it scene. That was maybe the most unsettling, most intense scene in the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe, where it's clear that they're hinting that Wanda's actually the one who's making Mr. Hart choke and possibly die, based off the fact that he's asking so many questions and ruining the illusion that she's created here, which is also possibly why he didn't appear in the second episode while his wife did. It's a very intense and unsettling prospect that they did there, and that's made clear by the end of the second episode, where Wanda says no, where that sword or AIM agent comes into the reality trying to get her out of it. She says no, in again, a very intense way, and she backtracks time to stay in that reality. Again, it's a very unsettling prospect. She's the one who's created this reality. It's probably a coping mechanism to deal with all the loss she's felt in her life. Her parents, who are probably the 2 people we've seen in all the commercials, which also showcase all her past trauma, and then her brother, Pietro, and then Vision. And she's created this wholesome reality to cope with all of that, and it's such an intriguing prospect that she's the one who's doing this, something that we've never really seen her do anything like this in the movies, but in the comics she is able to alter reality, and it's something that we're probably seeing right here, and it's so intriguing. That's probably the main takeaway that I've had from the first 2 episodes, other than it being really fun and really intense at points. It's incredibly intriguing, and I mostly have a general idea of where they're going, but not the whole idea, and I cannot wait to see the rest of the episodes. That being said, there are a lot of Easter eggs and references and hints that are easy to miss if you don't look closely, and if you don't look closely and you do miss those things, then this episode or these episodes could mainly come off as just pure comedies, pure episodes that are trying to be sitcoms. And because there isn't really that big of a difference between the style of sitcoms between 50s and 60s, it's possible that people think that that's where the show is going to be for the entirety of the season, which is just not true. The 70s and 80s and 90s will also probably have laugh tracks, but I don't think the 2000s or the 2010s will, and each episode will have a different style, so I don't really get, I've seen a lot of reviews on IMDb saying that the show is unfunny, and it's like a dated form of comedy, and things like that, and that's what they were going for. They were going for the dated form of comedy, which is also sprinkled with so many Easter eggs and references and also intense moments that I don't really get how you couldn't like, or at least be intrigued by these first 2 episodes. That being said, though, a lot of people didn't get it, or a lot of people didn't like it, and that did lead to a fairly low rating on IMDb that just really bothers me. This whole IMDb situation was kind of a cause-effect scenario. A lot of people went to IMDb right away, rating the show 10 out of 10 because they loved it so much, which is also pretty stupid to me. I honestly don't think you should be able to rate the show until at least the first season is out completely, because they're rating the entire show based off just 2 episodes, and 2 episodes that I don't really deserve 10 out of 10s either, in my opinion, but because so many people rated it 10 out of 10s, and because people are either don't like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, think it's overrated, or they didn't like this show specifically, a lot of people decided to remedy those 10 out of 10s by giving it 1s out of 10. If you look at IMDb ratings, you could check based off of the amount of stars they've given it. Literally, over a third of the reviews give it 1 out of 10, and then over a third of the reviews also give it a 10 out of 10, leaving less than a third of the reviews to give it any of the other 8 numbers possible. And even then, a lot of them are 2s and 3s and then 9s and 8s. There's really not a lot of things in the middle. You basically either love it or you hate it, which is a little bit weird. It seems like it falls in between 2 categories: people who got it, who got all what they're going for and didn't take it at face value, but then there are also people who did take it at face value and didn't get it, and because of that they thought that it was just basically a straight up comedy in a very dated format that it wasn't really all that funny, which leads to so many people giving it 1s out of 10. And I feel like it's just so unfortunate. I will say that I do understand some of the criticism, but not really because of the show itself. I think that the show, if you don't really delve into it, if you don't look at the subreddits and all the theories and things, there are a lot of things that you could miss. There are honestly a lot of things that I did miss until I checked the subreddits and looked at all the theories, and then I got so many different things. So if you're not a hardcore fan and you don't check those things, then there are probably a lot of things that you would not get, and then, like I said, you would take the show at completely face value, which is why I think, while this is not really what I think for most shows, I do think that this show probably should have went with the Netflix style and released the entire season in one go. I personally prefer for shows to be released weekly, like for The Boys and The Mandalorian last year. I was able to enjoy it a lot more, and for much longer, than, say, Cobra Kai, which released a couple weeks ago, and it just came out, and then it was gone. I love the season, but I wish it would have came out in a more sparring manner, it came out over the course of a couple months. WandaVision, however, I think would have 100% benefited from being just a one-time release for the entire season because of how confusing it can be and because of how many answers they would have to give by the end of the season. I feel like if people saw the entire season, got all the answers they needed to get, it probably wouldn't have been as divisive as it ended up being. Based off of the first 2 episodes, there also would have been a lot more variety in the type of comedies because, like I said, there wasn't really a big difference between the 50s and the 60s comedies, much like there isn't really a big difference between the 2000s and the 2010s. But if you got the 70s in there, and then the 80s and the 90s, and especially the 2000s itself, there would be much more variety. People would much more see what they're going for instead of thinking that the entire show would be the same thing. And overall, I think that this show specifically, and again, this is not something that I think usually, but WandaVision probably should have been released all at once, and I don't know, maybe it wouldn't have been as divisive. Anyway, that's it for this video. What I thought about the first 2 episodes of WandaVision and the whole review bombing situation. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below about the first 2 episodes, your intrigue for the rest of the season, whether or not you hate it or love it, because it seems like everybody either hates it or love it, or maybe you're somewhere in between, maybe you're an outlier. Let me know in the comments down below. And if you want me to make more Marvel content, because that is something that I feel like I do want to do more of, especially this year with all the Marvel TV shows that are coming out, let me know in the comments down below if you would like to see that. And if you like this video, make sure to leave a like, share, and subscribe. And thanks for watching.